Hello, my dear students of class 9. Welcome to biology class. Today we will begin with a new chapter, skeleton, movement and locomotion, chapter number 12. Clear? So first of all, what does movement and locomotion means? Because most of the animals, they are characterized by having a definite shape, and they have the capacity to move the different parts of their body. Okay, and due to that we are also able to move from one place to another place, which is called locomotion. So generally movement means we are confined to a fixed positions and we are just able to move our body parts, clear, which is mainly seen in plants. But locomotion means we are able to move from one place to another place in search of food and shelter. So generally the animals used to see the locomotion and the plant used to show the process of movement. Clear? So first we will learn about the functions of human skeleton. So the skeleton in our body has got main 6 functions or the purposes. So the first one is support and shape. So the skeleton in our body, they used to provide the support or the framework to the soft body parts. Clear? So that it will give them a definite shape. Number 2, it gives protections. So several delicate organs like the spinal cord, okay, like the heart and the lungs are protected by the skeletal systems. For example, think spinal cord, the bundle of nerve fibers is protected by the vertebral column. The ribs used to protect the heart and the lungs, so they help in protections. Number 3, movement. Okay, so many bones are joined to each other in a manner that one bone can be moved on the other, and this movement of the bones is mainly done by the help of the muscles also. Clear? Okay, next one is leverage, the lever mechanisms by which the certain bones and joints, they form the levers which will increase the speed and the distance of the movement via muscles. Then 5th one, they will help in the formation of blood cells, because we have got certain type of blood cells like RBC, WBC, okay, which are mainly formed in the bone marrow cells. We have got the yellow marrow cells, we have got the red marrow cells. Okay, yellow marrow cells will help in the formation of WBC, then red marrow cells will help in the formation of RBC. So these bones, or let's say the skeletal systems, will also help in the formation of our blood cells, that is RBC and WBC. And number 6 is that the bones are the storehouse of calcium and phosphorus for the rest of the body. So these are the general 6 functions of the human skeleton. Clear? The next one, we will talk about the constituents of skeleton. So skeletal system is mainly consists of bones, cartilage and ligament. Okay, bones, they comprise the heart, framework of the body, which I've learned already. Then cartilage, which are the supporting and the connecting structures. For example, the external ear to the human ear, the tip of the nose, these are the cartilage. The ligament, which will help in binding the bones together. So this usually forms the bone. Okay, so first we'll learn about the bones, which is the main component of our skeletal system and is mainly composed of organic material and the inorganic material. When we talk about the inorganic material, it is mainly composed of calcium and phosphorus. Okay, so nearly around 2/3 of the entire bone is mainly composed of this inorganic material, and mainly they are calcium and phosphorus. So when a bone is placed in a weak hydrochloric acids, these mineral parts will be removed from the bone and only the organic material will be there. Such a bone is called decalcified bone, where the calcium has been removed, and such bones will be soft and they will be flexible and they can even be tied into a knot. And on the other hand, if a bone is heated, strongly heated, then its organic matter will be destroyed and only the minerals matter will remain part, and such a bones are brittle and they can quickly break. That's why on aging, when one gets older, the bone becomes fragile. It tends to break easily. Okay, why? Because the organic part of the bone will be reduced, and that's why on aging, when there will be a fracture, it will take much time for healing. Okay, it will take much time for the bones to rejoin. Okay, next one is let's go to the classification of bones. On the basis of shape, we have got long bones, we have got short bone, we have got flat bone, and we have got irregular bone. So these are the types of bones which has been classified on the basis of their shape. So we just look into the long bone. Okay, look at the figure number 12.1. We show the structure of a long bone. So when we look into the long bone, it shows that it is highly calcified. It contains a lot of calcium. It is hard and rigid connective tissues. Okay, it is very hard, so that it can stand the severe stresses also. And this bone is mainly composed of a cell called osteocytes. Okay, so bones are mainly made up of a cell called the osteocytes, which is mainly arranged in the form of a concentric ring, and where we'll find the collagen fibers and the mineral salts. That means calcium and the phosphorus are embedded in it. Now the outer surface of the bone, the external surface of the bone, is covered by a membrane, and that name of the membrane is periosteum. Okay, periosteum. So the external surface of the bone is called the periosteum, and is mainly composed of outer fibrous and the inner cellular layer. It also richly supplied with the blood vessels. A long bone has got a central cavity, a central hollow cavity. That means this particular cavity. Okay, a long bone has a central hollow cavity. That means this particular cavity, and this cavity is filled with the bone marrow. So we have got two types of bone marrow. I have told you we have got yellow marrow and the red marrow. So the yellow marrow will give rise to the white blood cells and is made up of adipose tissue and the blood vessels. Clear? And similarly, red marrow cells are present at the ends, and they will give rise to the red blood cells. So once I tell that a long bone has got a central hollow cavity which contains the marrow cells, we can say, and there are two types of marrow cells. One is called the yellow marrow cells, and the another one is called the red marrow cells. The yellow marrow cells is made up of adipose tissue and the blood vessels, and it will give rise to the white blood cells, whereas the red marrow cells, they will give rise to the red blood cells. Clear this one? So we have finished the classification of bones and the structure of a long bone. Now let us go to the next topic, that is the human skeleton. Okay, we'll see the human skeleton system now. Okay, so when we talk about the human skeleton, it says that the human skeleton, it consists of 206 bones, including the 3 very tiny bones. Okay, so the human skeleton, it consists of 206 bones, which includes the 3 very tiny bones in each ear. Clear? Okay, now the skeleton system has got 2 main divisions. So there are main 2 divisions of the human skeleton, and those 2 divisions are the axial skeleton, which includes the basic central framework of the body, like the skull, the vertebral column, and the sternum. And we have got the appendicular skeleton, which includes the let's say like hind bone, okay, hind limbs, the forelimbs, clear, and the girdles. So now we are going to look at the axial skeleton. So I have told you that the axial skeleton is mainly consists of the skull, the vertebral column, the ribs, and the sternum. So we are going to look into that. So first one is skull. Skull means it is the skeleton of the head. Okay, and it contains 2 parts. The upper part is called the cranium. The cranium is also called the brain box, and is made up of 8 bones. Okay, and these particular bones are permanently fixed, they are not able to move. Alright, and the other part of the bone, the skull bone, usually from the face. So it mainly contains around 14 bones, and the upper and the lower jaw are also formed by the help of this bone. Clear? And the back part of the head, when we look over here, the back part of the skull, it mainly contains a hole that is called the foramen magnum. Okay, the back part of the skull, you will find a hole, a cavity, which is called the foramen magnum, and from that foramen magnum runs the spinal cord. Okay, so spinal cord emerges from them, from the foramen magnum, from the brain, and it will continue through the vertebral column or through the backbone. Okay, now we look into the vertebral column, this one. Clear? So vertebral column is also called the spinal cord, okay, or it's more probably called the backbone. Okay, and inside it runs the bundle of nerve fibers, which is called the spinal cord. So this particular vertebral column, it is composed of 33 individual, or when they are fused, we can say 26 bones. 26 means when they are fused, but generally 33 individual bones usually forms the vertebral column, and they are usually called vertebrae. Okay, so these vertebrae are divided into 5 groups. Now what are they? The neck regions has got the cervical vertebrae, Then we have got 12 thoracic vertebrae, we have got 5 lumbar vertebrae, we have got 5 sacrum vertebrae, and we have got 4 coccyx vertebrae. So when we look into the sacrum vertebrae, the 5 vertebrae will be fused to form 1, and in case of coccyx vertebrae, the 4 will be fused into 1. So you can look over here, we have got the cervical vertebrae, we have got the thoracic vertebrae, we have got the lumbar vertebrae, we have got the sacrum vertebrae, and we have got the coccyx vertebrae. So altogether there are 33 individual bones that form the part of the vertebral column, but since they are fused during the formation of sacrum and the coccyx, so there are 26 bones. Okay, 20, that means when they are fused. So let's talk about the structure of the vertebrae now, this part. Okay, we are going to talk about the structure of the vertebrae. So let's see the structure of the vertebrae. Okay, so we are going to focus on this structure. Clear? So each vertebrae is somewhat ring-like structure. It looks like a ring-like structures, and in the lower part, that means in this part, it has a solid cylinder bone which is called the centrum. So this part we are talking about. Okay, it has a solid cylindrical part, and this part is called the centrum, or the body of the vertebrae. Then the two opposite ends of the centrum are flat. So when we look into the opposite parts, we'll see the flat structures here and here. So those two, let's say the dorsal side of the centrum has got a canal. Okay, so on the dorsal side of the centrum has got a canal, and that canal is called the neural canal. Okay, so on the dorsal side of the centrum, we have got the canal which is called the neural canal, and that neural canal is formed by the fusion of two neural arcs. So one neural arch you can see over here, this neural arch, and one is over here. Okay, one will be over here. So that two neural arcs will give rise to the neural canal, and in natural positions the spinal cord will run through this neural canal. Clear? Then next one is neural spine. Neural spine is a flat longitudinal ridge which will be projecting upward from the meeting point of the two neural arches. That means at the meeting point of the two neural arches, we will find the long longitudinal ridge which is projecting out, and that is called the neural spine. So at the meeting point of the two neural arches, we will find the neural spine. Okay, then we have got transverse process also. Okay, we have got two transverse processes which are thick sideward projection from the neural arch. So from the neural arch over here, we will find the transverse processes, and the neural arch also bears the articular facets. You can see over here, over this point, this particular point is called articular facets. Okay, so the neural arch also had got the articular facets which help in joining the two vertebrae one behind the other. So these articular facets will help in joining the two vertebrae, and we'll find a plate of cartilage called the invertebral disc or the gristle, which forms a kind of cushion between the two vertebrae. So this is the general structure of the vertebrae. Okay, we'll find the centrum, then on the dorsal side we'll find the neural canal which is formed by the two neural arches. Then from neural arches, at the meeting points, we will find the neural spine. Clear? Then from the neural arches, we can see the two processes coming out, which is called the transverse processes. Then we have got the articular facets at the origin of the neural arches, and these articular facets will help in joining the two vertebrae together. Clear? Now next one, we will see the neck or cervical vertebrae. The first one, if you remember, this is the cervical vertebrae. Okay, this is the thoracic vertebrae, this is the lumbar vertebrae, then sacrum vertebrae is there, then we have got the coccyx vertebrae. Okay, so we are going to discuss about that. So cervical vertebrae, the first cervical vertebrae is called the atlas, the second cervical vertebrae is called the axis, and the remaining 5 neck vertebrae don't have such any special names. Then thoracic vertebrae, they have got neural spines which are directed backward. Okay, and each of the transverse processes bears on its extremity of facets for articulations. Then you have got lumbar vertebrae which have well developed neural spines and transverse processes which serves for the attachment of powerful back muscles. Then we have got sacrum, a large bone formed by the fusion of 5 vertebrae, and to the sacrum there will be articulation or attachment of hip bones. Then you have got the coccyx, the last part of the backbone, and it is made up of 4 fused vertebrae. Okay, and which also represents the rudimentary tail of the human body, and mainly this tail is non-functional and it is called vestigial organs, but sometimes certain children or certain baby are born with this tail, and in that case this tail has to be removed. Okay, now next one is sternum, means the breastbone. That means this particular bone we are talking about. Okay, it's called the sternum. So if you can look over here, so this particular bone is called the sternum, which is also called the breastbone. So sternum is a long flat bone lying in the middle of the front part of the chest, and then we have ribs. So there are 12 pairs of ribs. If you can see over here the number, we have got how many pairs of ribs? We have got 12 pairs of ribs, and which along with thoracic vertebrae and the sternum, they form the bony cage or the rib cage. Okay, and they will protect the heart and the lungs. So let's check out the rib cage. The first 7 pairs of the ribs are called the true ribs, where they are attached with the sternum with the help of hyaline cartilage. Okay, the first 7 pairs of ribs, if you look at the figure, the first 7 pairs of ribs, they are attached to the sternum by the help of hyaline cartilage, so they are called true ribs. The 8th, 9th and 10th ribs, they are not attached to the sternum directly, but they are attached to the 7th rib with the help of hyaline cartilage only, whereas the last 11th and the 12th ribs, they are not attached to the sternum. They are known as the floating ribs. Okay, so first to 7 pair of ribs, they are attached to the sternum. 8, 9 and 10th ribs, they are attached to the 7th rib, so that they will attach to the sternum. But 11th and 12th pair of ribs, they are not attached to the sternum, so they are also called floating ribs. Keep in your mind. Okay, now let's talk about appendicular skeleton, the bones of the limbs and the girdles. So when we talk about the appendicular skeletons, we are talking only about the forelimbs, the hind limbs and the girdles. Okay, we have got pelvic girdles, okay, and we have got the shoulder girdles also. So first let's talk about the limbs, the bones on the limbs. So bones of the forelimbs and the hind limbs lastly correspond to each other. So we are looking into the bones of the forelimb, and that of the hind limb is the leg. So let us look at the structure of the forelimbs. Okay, so when we look into the forelimbs, that means this structure. When we are confused, we are going to look into the structure of the forelimbs, this structure, the hand part. Clear? So it shows that it has got upper arm. That means this upper arm is mainly composed of a long bone which is called the humerus. Okay, the lower arm is also composed of 2 long bones, but the name of 2 long bones are radius and ulna. So upper arm is mainly composed of a single large bone which is called the humerus, and the lower arm is also composed of 2 long bones which is called radius and ulna. Then on the wrist area, okay, that means on the wrist area, on these positions we have got 8 carpals. Then we have got 5 metacarpals in the palm area, and on the fingers we have got 14 phalanges. Clear? Okay, then let's go to hind limb. That means now we are going to the structure of the leg. Okay, so we are going to learn the structure of hind limb. Now this one, this structure. Okay, so hind limb, it consists of a long bone. Can you see over here? This is the long bone. So this long bone is called the femur, F-E-M-U-R, femur, which is the longest and the strongest bone of the body. Then we will find the 2 long bones, just like radius ulna. We will find 2 long bones which is called fibula and tibia. Okay, just like in the forelimbs we have got radius and ulna, so in the hind limbs we have got tibia and fibula. Okay, then in the ankle we have got, in the ankle part we have got tarsals. We have got 7 tarsals. Okay, then we have got 5 long metatarsals, and we have got 14 phalanges in the finger. Clear? And hind limbs also had got an additional bone which is called patella. This one, this particular additional bone which is not there in the hind, in the forelimb. This is called patella, also called the kneecap. Okay, it's present over there. So this is mainly joined to the lower end of the femur. Clear? So kneecap is a bone which is mainly developed from the tendon. So we have finished the bones of the limb, the forelimbs and the hind limbs. Now we will look into the girdles, G-I-R-D-L-E-S, girdles. Okay, so girdles are the part of the skeletons which helps to articulate the limb bones to the main skeleton. So girdles are mainly helping to connect the, or to attach the limb bones, the forelimbs and the hind limbs, to the main skeleton. So mainly there are 2 types of girdles. What are they? We have got shoulder or pectoral girdle. Okay, then we have got the second girdle called the hip girdle or the pelvic girdle. So first let us begin with the pectoral girdle. So this pectoral girdle is mainly composed of two flat triangular shoulder blades called the scapula. So this one, okay, it's mainly composed of two flat triangular shoulder blade, which is called the scapula. Okay, 1 and 2. Okay, then in its outer apex it bears a large somewhat cup-shaped structure which is called the glenoid cavity. It is called glenoid cavity, and into this glenoid cavity the rounded upper head of the humerus comes and bind. Clear? Then next to it we'll find a raised part which is long and curved, which is called the collarbone. So over there we'll find the attachment of collarbone. Okay, and the other end of the collarbone is joined to the uppermost part of the sternum. Then the hip or the pelvic girdle is at last the half-shaped part formed by the two hip bones, 1 and 2 hip bones. Okay, and each hip bone is made up of 3 fused bones, which is called ischium, ilium, and pubis. So each hip bone is made up of 3 fused bones, ischium, ilium, and pubis, and on each side it bears a large cup-shaped articular cavity, and the name of that cavity is acetabulum. So on both sides we will find a cavity. This one is the acetabulum. Okay, so on both these sides we are finding acetabulum. So here also we are getting the acetabulum. So both these sides we are finding acetabulum, and in this acetabulum the thigh bones, last rounded part of the thigh bones, will come in articulates. Okay, the hip girdle not only gives support to the skeleton of the hind limbs, but it also protects and supports the abdominal organs. Now let us see the difference between the male and the female skeleton. The male skeleton is generally larger and heavier than that of the female. Okay, in the female skeleton the pelvic or the hip bone is wider, or less is broad. Okay, why? Because it has to adapt to accommodate the fetus in the uterus during the time of pregnancy. So this hip bone in case of female is generally wider than that of the male. Clear? Now let's look at the region-wise classifications of bones and the number in the humans. So in the skeleton, like the exoskeleton in the skulls, we have got cranium 8 bones. In the face we have got 14 bones. In ear ossicles we have got 6 bones. In the height, bone in tongue, we have got 1 bone. In vertebral column we have got 26 bones. In ribs we have got 24 bones. Sternum we have got 1 bone. So altogether in exoskeleton we have got 80 number of bones. Now let's go to appendicular skeleton. So bones of the limbs, both left and right forelimb. Okay, so humerus 2, radius 2, ulna 2, carpals 16, metacarpals 10, phalanges 28, because in one there are 14. So when you consider both right and left, it becomes 28. Hind limb both left and right, femur 2, tibia 2, fibula 2, tarsals 14, metatarsals 10, phalanges 28, and patella, kneecap, which is not there in the forelimb, 2. So altogether in hind limb there are 60 bones. And in girdles you have got shoulder girdles, scapula 2, clavicle 2. So 4 bones are there in shoulder girdles. In hip girdles we have got 2 bones. So altogether how many bones are there? There are 206 bones. Clear? So this is the region wise classification of bones and the number in humans. Clear? So here we have finished the human skeleton. Now we will go into the joints. Now what does joints mean? Okay, so now we will look into the joint part. So what does joint means? Joints, joints means. Clear? So joint means the point at which the two separate bones will meet. So the meeting point of the two separate bones is called the joint. Clear? So when the two joints comes and meet, that is called joint. And there are mainly 3 major categories of joints in our body. They are immovable joint, partially movable joint, and freely movable joints. Clear? So immovable joints, partially movable joints, and freely movable joints. Now what do you mean by immovable joints? These joints are not able to move. Okay, in this type of joints the bones are not able to move. For example, the cranium. Okay, the bones in the craniums are not able to move. Now partially movable joints, they are able to move but very little. The names are partially. They are able to move but very little. Okay, very little movement occurs in this type of joints. Okay, for example, joint between the rib and the breastbone or between the vertebrae, they can move very little. Then comes the freely movable joints, which are able to move freely with varying degree of movements. Okay, so In this case, what we find that we are finding the 4 types of joints. And what are those? They are the gliding joints, they are the pivot joints, they are the hinge joints, and the ball and the socket joints. So this comes under the freely movable joints. So in this type of joints, we find varying degree of movement. So let's go to the first one, the gliding joint. So what does gliding joints means? So this gliding joint, it occurs between the bones of the wrist and also in the bones of the ankles and also between the vertebrae. Then pivot joints. Here one bone is rotated over a pivot like end. So you can see the structures. So in the structure you can see the one bone which is being rotated over the pivot like end of the another bone, mainly the skull, okay, which is rotated over the axis vertebra. Then we have got the hinge joint, which works like a hinge of the door. Okay, so this joint moves like a hinge in one plane, just like the hinge of the door. Example, the elbow joint between the humerus and the ulna, okay, and between the bone of the finger and the toes and the lace is just work like the hinge joint. Then you have a ball and socket joints. Look at this figure, okay, ball and socket joint, which is the 4th one. So here the one end of a bone which is round in structure, that means this one, femur, which is round in structure, this one, okay, which is round in structure, will fit into a cup-like regression, the acetabulum part, okay, will fit into a cup-like regression or depression of another bone. So here the one bone is rounded, another one is like a cup-like depression. So this round bone will go and fit into the cup-like depression of the another bone, and this joint provides movement in any directions. The best examples we can give you the shoulder joints and the hip joints. Clear? Because in the shoulder joint, the head of the humerus will fit in the glenoid cavity, and in the hip joints, the large ball-like head of the femur will fit into the acetabulum. So these are the 2 examples of the ball and socket joint. Now next one is synovial joint. Okay, now what is synovial joints? These are the freely movable joints which are like the shoulder joints, and the knee joints are also called the synovial joints. You can look in the figure also, the knee joint, the knee part, okay, the joints in the knees, they are called the synovial joints. Now these particular synovial joints, they will allow considerable movement, but they have got 2 requirements. First, they should be held firmly in positions, and number 2, the surfaces whom they come in contact should be lubricated in order to remain like to avoid frictions. Okay, so they must remain firmly in positions, and number 2, whatever surface they come in contact with, that surface need to be lubricated in order to avoid frictions or to remove frictions. So these particular surfaces are lubricated by the help of a fluid which is called the synovial fluid. Okay, so synovial fluid will help in lubricating the synovial joints. That's why they are also called synovial joints. Now this knee joint, first, for examples in synovial joint, we are taking the example of knee joint. It is held in position by a strong ligament, and also we will find the fibrous capsules. Clear? And the ligament will prevent the dislocation in normal movement. Then the synovial fluid is there, which is contained mainly in a sac-like structures, okay, which is mainly found by the synovial membrane. So this sacs serves as a cushion between the bones. Remember the name of the fluid, synovial fluid, which is present in synovial joint, and its function is to prevent the friction. Clear? Now next one, we'll go into the muscles. The muscles in the body, it provides the means of all movement. They cover the skeletal framework and also give counter shape to the body. It helps to maintain the body posture while sitting, standing, or walking. These are the functions of muscles in our body. And most muscles, they are usually long. Look at the figure. They are usually long, okay, and they are made up of contractile tissues which undergo contractions. Now each muscle usually has 2 ends. We have got fixed ends from where the muscle originates, and a movable end which pulls some part. Okay, the movable end is mainly drawn out to form the tendon. The movable ends form the tendon, and this tendon which is attached with the bone. Okay, so the movable part, the movable end, which gives rise to tendon, and that tendon is mainly attached to the bone. So when stimulated by a nerve, the muscles contracts to become shorter and thicker. So whenever these muscles will be stimulated by the nerve, then the muscles undergoes contraction, they become shorter, they become thicker, but muscles never become lengthened. Okay, they only become short and they become thicker. Clear? And when it becomes shorter and thicker, it will pull the bone at the movable end. And muscles, that muscles can only contract, they can relax, but they cannot lengthen. Clear? Next one is antagonistic muscles. That means those muscles which works against each other. Okay, whenever any muscles are working against each other, then that is called antagonistic muscle. So let's look it out. A structure, let's say a structure which has been moved by a muscle cannot return to its original position. So whenever a structure is displaced from its original position, okay, it's been moved from its original position, then that structure cannot come to its original position by itself. It will come to its original position only by the action of another muscle. Clear? So one muscle is removing the structure from its position, then another muscle is bringing that structure to its original position. So here both the muscles are working against each other, and this type of muscles are called antagonistic muscles. For example, the biceps muscle of the upper arm flexes, okay, when it bends the lower arm over the upper arm. We're saying that bicep muscle of the upper arm, that is when it bends the lower arm over the upper arm. Now this particular lower arm has to come to its original position, okay, by itself it cannot come to its original position. Now we need another muscle so that this lower arm will come back to its original position, and is mainly done by the help of the tricep muscles. So here the bicep muscle is causing the bending of the lower muscles over the upper arm, okay, and this lower arm is going back to the original positions by the help of which muscle? Tricep muscles. So here bicep muscles and the tricep muscles are working against each other, and therefore these muscles are antagonistic muscles. Alright, now we'll talk about the kinds of muscles. We have got three types of muscles: voluntary muscles, involuntary muscles, and the cardiac muscles. Okay, so there are about 650 muscles in our body, and they have been categorized into voluntary, involuntary, and the cardiac muscles. Voluntary muscles, which are under the control of our will; involuntary muscles, which are not under the control of our will; and there are certain other muscles which are both voluntary and involuntary, like the muscles of eyelids and the diaphragm. These are both voluntary as well as involuntary. And cardiac muscles, they will form the walls of the heart, and these cardiac muscles, they undergo rapid movement and they are never tired easily. Okay, and coordination of muscle has to be coordinated. Okay, when muscle undergo coordination, then we will be able to walk, we will be able to run, we will be able to play. But if there is no muscle coordination, then we will not be able to do any such activities. So therefore muscles has to show coordinations to perform any functions by the skeletal system. Now next one, we'll talk about the lever mechanisms, where we'll see the movement of different parts of the body. Alright, because movement of different parts of the muscles of the, let's say, bones or the joints are mainly due to the lever mechanisms actions or lever actions. So here we'll see or we'll just compare the movement of the bones or the joints with that of the lever actions. So we'll first compare the lever of the first order. Okay, we'll compare the lever of the first order. That means we are comparing this one, the lever of the first order, where P means power, W means weight, and F means fulcrum. Clear? So here the power and weight act with the fulcrum. So fulcrum is in between the weight and the power, and this can be represented by the extension of the arm at the elbow by the action of tricep muscle. So when we are extending the arm at the elbow by the help of the tricep muscles, then that will give us the idea of first order lever action. Now let's talk about the second lever actions. Okay, in the second lever actions, we can consider the, look over here, okay, second order actions. Just look over here. It says that in second order actions, the fulcrum is at one end of the lever and the power at the other end, with the weight in between. So that means over here. So second order lever actions. So here the fulcrum is at one end, the power is at the other end, and in between the power and the fulcrum we have got the weight. Now this can be represented by the gastrocnemius muscles raising the weight of the body on the toes. Okay, so the second order fulcrum action is represented by the gastrocnemius muscles. Okay, this will be done by the gastrocnemius muscles, which will help in raising the weight of the body on the toes. Now let's just talk about the third order lever actions, in which the fulcrum and the weight are at the end and power is at the center, and this can be represented by the biceps muscles flexing the arm. Okay, so this third order lever actions is mainly given by the bicep muscles, which is mainly used in flexing the arms. Okay, so I have finished the first order lever actions, second order and the third order lever actions, representing the actions of our muscles in the body. So here we have finished the chapter skeleton movement and locomotions. So this much for today's class. We will see you in next class with the new chapter. Thank you.